Welcome back to Sleepers Podcast. I'm Mike, and this is episode 2. Tonight we're talking about first jobs and why they never feel the way you imagine they will. Veronica's here with me. She's one of my oldest friends, which means she also has, unfortunately for her, some very strong stories. Veronica, thanks for being here.
I don't like how threatening that sounded, but I'm happy to be here.
That's fair.
You made it sound like I'm about to be questioned under a bright lamp.
Only a little?
Great. Good start.
How are you?
I'm all right. Tired, honestly, which feels right for this kind of conversation.
It does.
You?
Pretty much the same. A little tired, a little calm. Glad I no longer work some of the jobs I used to have.
That is one of the best adult feelings, actually.
It really is.
There's a specific kind of relief in knowing you never have to go back to your first job.
Exactly. Which feels like the perfect place to begin.
It really does.
I think before you have your first job, you have this very vague picture of what work is supposed to feel like. You think it'll feel grown up, structured, official somehow.
Right, like you're stepping into this serious adult world.
And then you get there, and it's mostly fluorescent lights and somebody explaining a system too fast.
And then walking away like, all right, you've got it.
Exactly.
That first day feeling is awful.
It really is.
You're trying to look calm while understanding basically nothing.
Your face is steady, your brain is empty.
Completely empty. And somehow everybody else looks like they know exactly what they're doing.
Which usually isn't true.
Not at all. But when you're new, it feels true.
It does.
I also remember thinking my first paycheck was going to feel dramatic.
Same.
Like there'd be some big emotional moment. I earned this. I'm officially an adult now.
Right. A little movie scene.
Exactly. And then you see the number and it's just bleak.
It can be a rough moment.
Not even only because it's small, although sometimes it is. It's more that you suddenly understand the exchange. You start doing the math immediately.
I gave them a full month of my life.
Exactly.
And this is what came back?
That's the part. You don't even get angry right away. You just sort of stare at it.
Almost like there must be more coming.
Right. Like this is the practice paycheck.
The preview version.
Exactly. And then somebody older tells you, no, that's...
That moment stays with you.
It really does. Working a full month for the first time is strange.
It changes your sense of time.
Completely. A month feels huge when you're younger. Then you work that month, get paid, buy a few boring things, and suddenly it's gone.
Money moves faster than effort.
That sentence is upsetting.
I know.
But it's true.
It is.
I remember getting my first proper paycheck and thinking, all right, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to save most of this.
How long did that last?
Not long. Food, transport, something annoying, maybe a phone bill. And then I checked again and had that horrible adult moment of, wait, hold on, no way.
Where did it go?
Where did it actually go?
It's never one exciting thing either.
No, which almost makes it worse.
It disappears politely.
Exactly. Quietly. Respectfully. Which is rude.
Very rude.
You want at least one fun purchase in the story.
Right. If the money's gone, it should at least be because you did something memorable.
Instead, it's like, no, I bought soap and paid for the bus.
Which is somehow insulting.
Deeply insulting.
I also think nobody warns you how boring first jobs can be.
Oh man, that part.
Some jobs aren't hard in an exciting way. They're hard because time slows down.
Exactly that.
You look at the clock and 3 minutes have passed. Those 3-minute stretches can damage a person.
They really can.
My first job had these afternoon stretches where nothing happened, but you still had to look useful?
That's the worst version.
Truly. You can't sit, you can't look relaxed, you can't even look too still.
So you start pretending to be busy.
Constantly. Rearranging things that are already arranged, walking somewhere with one paper in your hand like it matters.
Looking at a shelf with fake concern.
Opening a drawer and staring into it like answers live there.
That's too real.
Everybody has done it.
My first job had a lot of that. Long stretches where nothing urgent was happening, but you absolutely could not look comfortable.
Which is exhausting in its own way.
Weirdly exhausting. I'd go home tired from performing seriousness.
That's such a perfect way to put it.
It really felt like that. Not tired from the task, tired from trying to seem like somebody who belonged there.
And when you're new, every correction feels huge.
Exactly.
Somebody says, "Can you do that a different way?" And your whole body reacts like you're about to be fired.
Every time.
You hear, "Quick question," and suddenly you're preparing a speech in your head.
Mentally packing your bag.
Thinking, well, short career.
I also wasn't prepared for how awkward coworkers could be.
Not even rude awkward, just work awkward.
Exactly.
Work throws together people who would never choose each other in real life.
That's very true.
You're suddenly in a break room with somebody eating tuna at 9 in the morning, somebody crying over tea, and one person who wants to tell you their entire personal history on day 3.
That is painfully accurate.
Work is weird. It really is. You end up knowing things about people you barely know. Things you absolutely did not ask to know. Never asked.
That silence must have been awful.
It was so bad. Then he goes, "Where did you get any of that?"
No.
Not angry either, just confused.
That's worse.
Much worse. I had no answer. I think I actually said, "I thought it sounded right."
Veronica.
I know.
That's catastrophic.
I know I was 20 and deeply unqualified.
That is such a perfect, terrible answer.
It's awful.
Did he laugh?
Not at first. First, he just stared at me like he was trying to decide whether I was joking. Then he laughed a little, but in that tired way. Not because it was funny, more because his spirit briefly left his body.
That makes it even better, honestly.
He made me call the woman back.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You had to fix it.
I had to call her back and say, "Hi, just to clarify, some of the information I gave you was incorrect."
Some of it.
I know, as if part of it had been solid.
That wording is amazing.
It was the most polite way I could think of to describe complete fiction.
How did she take it?
Better than I deserved. She just went quiet for a second and said, "Right. So, what is the actual answer?"
Very calm of her. Too calm.
That made it worse.
The calm ones always make it worse.
Exactly. If she'd been rude, I could have blamed her for the emotional damage. Instead, she was reasonable.
Which is devastating.
Exactly.
That's a very strong story.
Thank you. I wish it weren't.
I can see why it stayed with you.
I can still feel the heat in my face.
I would never let that go, personally.
I know. Telling you was a tactical error.
I'm being respectful.
Suspiciously respectful.
I'm saving the rest for later.
I had this shift where I was trying so hard to look competent. Probably too hard.
That's already dangerous.
Somebody asked me to bring out a certain stack of items from the back. Very simple job, nothing dramatic.
Which means it went badly.
Obviously. So I go into the back room and I cannot find them. At that point, a normal person would come back and say, I can't find them. Can you show me where they are?
Right.
I did not do that. I decided I had to solve it alone or I'd look useless.
That is such first job logic.
Completely. So I stayed back there way too long, opening boxes, checking labels, crouching down, getting more stressed by the minute. No. Long enough that I could no longer come out casually. That window had closed.
Right, because now the issue isn't only the items. Now it's the amount of time you vanished.
Exactly. So I finally come out trying to act normal, and the guy I'm working with just looks at me and says, they've been next to the door the whole time.
No way.
Fully next to the door. Not hidden, not mislabeled, just there.
That's painful.
Very painful.
What did you say?
Something terrible. Probably, right, I just wanted to make sure.
Mike,
I know.
that's such a bad lie.
Horrible lie.
Nobody has ever said that naturally.
I know. And the worst part was he gave me this little nod, like we were both agreeing to protect what was left of my dignity.
That makes it worse.
Much worse. If he'd laughed, I could have recovered faster.
The pity nod is brutal.
It stayed with me.
I'd think about that in the shower for years.
I did.
I knew it.
All right, what's your worst one?
And because you're new, people try different versions of themselves on you. Some are lovely. Some decide you are now their audience.
Which can be dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Did you have somebody who immediately started telling you deeply personal things?
Immediately. First week.
Of course.
She was sweet, but there was no warm-up at all. I knew who she didn't trust, who she used to date, which manager had fake energy, all of it.
Fake energy is such a work phrase.
It really is, and you can't argue with it.
You can't exactly say, actually, I think his energy is authentic.
Right. I've reviewed it, and it seems genuine.
That's bad.
It is.
Customers are another thing nobody explains properly.
That's a whole category.
People always say customers can be rude. They don't mention how strange they can be.
Strange is the word. Some are rude, sure. Some are just deeply odd.
I know exactly what you mean.
I had one woman ask me a question, cut me off halfway through the answer, then argue with me using the answer I had just started giving her.
That's impressive.
It really was.
A speedrun version of confusion.
Exactly. She didn't want information. She wanted the experience of being inconvenienced.
That's very real.
And when it's your first job, you still think you can solve that with politeness.
Such an innocent belief.
Very innocent. You think if you explain things clearly enough, the moment will become normal.
It rarely does.
Rarely.
My first job story that still gets me is quiet but humiliating.
Those are the good ones.
I have a few, which feels unfortunate.
It feels honest.
All right, this is bad. My first job had a phone part to it. which already did not suit me.
Dangerous.
I can talk to people. That's not the issue. It's the work phone voice. That strange, cheerful middle voice.
Right. Not too flat, not too alive.
Exactly. Somewhere fake, but acceptable.
Very hard to find.
So one day I answer a call, do my whole little work voice. And this woman starts asking me something kind of complicated.
Okay.
I realize almost immediately that I do not know the answer.
Terrible feeling.
Awful. And instead of saying, 1 second, let me check, which is what I should have said,
You guessed.
I committed to nonsense.
Oh no.
Fully. I started answering with complete confidence and absolutely no basis.
That's bold in the worst possible way.
It was panic in a cardigan.
That's actually very good.
So I'm halfway through this made-up explanation, and my manager walks past.
Of course he does.
And he does that slow turn. That very slow turn where someone realizes they are hearing something deeply wrong.
I know that turn.
He stops. He looks at me. I look at him. And instead of stopping, I keep going.
Naturally.
Because at that point, I'm trapped by my own sentence. I can't just stop in the middle and say, never mind, I'm inventing things.
That would have been cleaner, somehow.
Much cleaner. So I finish the fake answer, hang up, and there's this silence.
I do think first jobs are full of these tiny humiliations nobody warns you about.
Totally.
Not life-ending things, just little moments where you realize, oh, I'm inexperienced, and unfortunately, this is happening in public.
That's the real problem. You're learning in front of witnesses.
Exactly. It isn't only that you don't know things,
It's that people can see you not know them.
And sometimes they're kind about it,
Sometimes.
and sometimes they really aren't.
Also true.
Did work feel different from what you imagined when you were younger?
Completely different.
In what way?
I thought it would feel more official, more stable. Like once you had a job, you'd somehow feel sure of yourself.
Right.
I imagined adults at work moved through the day with certainty.
Same.
Then you start working and realize half the building is improvising.
At least half.
Minimum half.
that was strangely comforting once I noticed it.
Same. It didn't make work magical, it just made it less mysterious.
That's a good way to put it.
The mystery disappears. Then it becomes more human.
Sometimes disappointingly human.
Very often. Like, oh, so this is the professional world. A jammed printer, awkward emails, and somebody quietly losing patience near a vending machine.
That does cover a lot of it.
It really does.
I was also surprised by how much of work had nothing to do with the actual work. That's true. Reading the room, managing your energy, figuring out who's in a mood, trying not to sound strange in emails. Emails are their own separate education. Truly.
Nothing prepares you for writing. Hi, just following up, and then staring at it like it might sound rude somehow.
Or too cold. Or too eager. Or weirdly passive-aggressive by accident.
Exactly. So you add one more line, then another, and suddenly the email sounds...
Not loving every part, just understanding it better.
And understanding yourself inside it? Like, all right, I need quiet after work. I need snacks. I need one coworker who can read the exact tone of my sigh.
That person is essential.
Essential.
A good work friendship can save a whole job.
Completely. Somebody sees you survive a terrible customer interaction and silently hands you a biscuit.
That's friendship.
That's family, honestly.
Better than family in that exact moment.
Sometimes, truly.
I also think first jobs teach you a lot about embarrassment.
Unfortunately,
You survive things that feel enormous at the time,
then years later they turn into stories you tell calmly at night.
which is nice.
It is. There's something comforting in that.
The moment didn't destroy you.
It barely even slowed you down in the end.
Right.
At the time, though, it feels huge. One awkward call, one bad shift, one weird interaction, and you think your whole life is collapsing.
I know,
Then you go back the next day, and the world has moved on.
which is a useful lesson, even if it's not a pleasant one.
Very useful. Not pleasant. At all.
If you could talk to your first job self for 1 minute, what would you say?
Oh man,
I know.
I'd probably say you do not have to act like you know everything. Ask the question. Admit you're unsure. Let the pause happen. It is so much less painful than confidently inventing an answer and then leaving your body.
That's very solid advice.
Hard earned.
Extremely hard-earned.
What about you?
I think I'd say most things at work are not as emotionally loaded as they feel when you're new. A correction is usually just a correction. One awkward moment is rarely the whole story of who you are.
That would have helped me a lot.
It would have helped me too.
There's something kind of sweet about remembering how seriously you took everything back then.
There is.
Even in my worst story, I was trying to be useful. Very badly. But still,
That counts for something.
I'd like that officially noted.
I'll put it on the record.
Thank you.
I think that's enough for today.
I was about to say the same.
Veronica, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Even if you did make me relive that phone call.
I did. And I appreciate your sacrifice.
I'm generous like that.
And thanks to everybody listening. This was episode 2 of Sleepers Podcast. Wherever you are tonight, I hope this gave you something familiar to settle into. Take care.